Good Thursday afternoon. Thanks for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Chris Arabsky. New today, President Trump threatening to invoke the Insurrection Act over continued anti-ICE protests in Minnesota. Here's his full post from Truth Social saying, quote, "If the corrupt politicians of Minnesota don't obey the law and stop the professional agitators and insurrectionists from attacking the patriots of ICE, who are only trying to do their job, I will institute the Insurrection Act, which many presidents have done before me, and quickly put an end to the travesty that is taking place in that once great state," end quote. It comes after another federal agent shot a person in the city last night, city of Minneapolis that is. Governor Walz responding to the president's threat today, saying he's making an appeal to the president, wanting to turn the temperature down and stop what he is calling a campaign of retribution. In that statement, Walz also saying to Minnesotans, quote, "I know this is scary. We must speak out loudly, urgently, but also peacefully. We cannot fan the flames of this chaos. That's what he wants," end quote. This is video from the scene last night. You can see agents pushing protesters back using flashbangs and tear gas. All this happening just 1 week after Renee Good was shot and killed by an ICE agent in Minneapolis after her car went towards that officer. Right now, an investigation is underway into the latest shooting by the federal agent that unfolded last night. It unfolded in the Hawthorne neighborhood just before 7 o'clock last night. The Department of Homeland Security says it started with a targeted traffic stop on Interstate 94 that turned into a chase. They say the officer was being attacked by the suspect and two other people with a snow shovel and a broomstick when he shot the original suspect. Both the officer and the suspect are in the hospital right now. DHS says all three people assaulting the agent are in the country illegally and were arrested by ICE shortly after the shooting. After the shooting, anti-ICE protesters flooding the area for hours. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem says she discussed the next steps in Minnesota with the president.
I describe it as violent and a violation of the law in many places. I discussed with the president this morning several things that we are dealing with under the department and different operations. We did discuss the Insurrection Act. He certainly has the constitutional authority to utilize that. My hope is that this leadership team in Minnesota will start to work with us to get criminals off the streets.
Governor Tim Walz posted on X just after 11 p.m. last night saying state investigators were on scene. He wrote, quote, "I know you're angry. I'm angry. Donald Trump wants violence in the streets, but Minnesota will remain an island of decency, justice, community, and peace. Don't give him what he wants." Again, saying that, end quote. The city of Minneapolis shared a similar message on X, demanding ICE leave the city and state immediately and saying it stands with immigrant and refugee communities. We also heard from Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey.
American citizens are getting picked up off the street by people in masks. That's not the way things should be conducted in any city in America. That's not who we are. That's not America. So I'm calling for peace. This is an impossible situation that our city is presently being put in. And at the same time, we are trying to find a way forward. People are scared. The atmosphere is tense. But again, there is another option. We can stop going down this route together.
New this afternoon, the ACLU of Minnesota is suing the Trump administration, saying ICE agents are profiling certain communities. They say the administration is clearly targeting the Somali and Latino communities and arresting some people in those communities without warrants or probable cause.
Remember, this affects us all. These are all of our rights that are at stake. The rights to be free of unlawful search and seizure, and to be free from warrantless arrests and racial profiling are some of the most essential and critical rights we have. And Democrats and Republicans alike should be alarmed by what is happening in Minnesota to these fundamental rights.
Meantime, a federal judge is not taking immediate action on Minnesota's request for a restraining order to stop the surge of ICE operations in the state, saying the court needs more time to gather information in a case she called a frontier in constitutional law. Here's Kent Erdahl.
It's been 5 days since Minnesota's Attorney General and Twin Cities mayors filed a lawsuit in an attempt to freeze the biggest ICE operation in U.S. history.
Because this has to stop.
But in a hearing today, the state argued that the operation keeps growing, now approaching 3,000 federal agents, something the Department of Justice didn't dispute. But Judge Catherine Menendez said she needs more time to review the evidence, calling the issues raised grave and important matters, but adding that they are somewhat frontier issues in constitutional law.
Yeah, this is absolutely a new frontier. We are in completely uncharted waters here as to what the federal government can do, what are the limits on what the federal government can do.
University of Minnesota professor of political science and law Tim Johnson says the record deployment of federal agents here is almost certain to set new precedent in court. But he's not sure the case the state is making will be the lawsuit that does it.
We allege that the obvious targeting of Minnesota for our diversity, for our democracy, and our differences of opinion with the federal government is a violation of the Constitution.
A state simply telling the federal government, we don't want you here, is really a difficult argument to make if for no other reason than Article 6 of the Constitution, and that is the Supremacy Clause. The federal government and its laws reign supreme over all state laws, all local laws. And so if the federal government says we have a problem in Minnesota or North Dakota or Kentucky or Louisiana, and we don't think the state is taking care of that problem, we will come in and we will solve that problem.
But Johnson says how federal agents go about solving that problem matters a lot, which is why he's more closely watching another lawsuit recently filed.
Transparency matters. Observation matters.
Susan Tincher
What happened to me sends a message.
was among 6 Minnesotans who sued back in December, accusing ICE of violating their First and Fourth Amendment rights.
I was on a public street. I did not cross any line or interfere with anything. Within seconds, officers rushed me, grabbed me, and slammed me face first into the snow.
The claims to stop this actually have to be civil liberties claims and civil rights claims that those rights are being violated. The lawsuit needs to be won by the observers, by people who have been detained and then have had their car window smashed, have been slammed to the ground. The aggregation of all of those lawsuits will have a pretty marked effect on how far ICE can go in Minnesota and in other states once they move on.
What an interesting take by a constitutional expert. We've used him all the time, a brilliant man. Right now, the family of a man violently arrested by federal agents at a St. Paul gas station says that he is alive but is seriously hurt. Now, a woman identifying herself as Orban Mauricio Henriquez Serrano's sister, her name is Consuelo, said he recently had knee surgery and was badly injured in this arrest. You're seeing pictures from the Associated Press right now. Videos of that arrest were shared widely on social media. This incident occurred Sunday. Associated Press photos show him being dragged while unconscious and carried away by Border Patrol agents into a car, a van. Now, online records show that he's being held in an ICE facility in El Paso, Texas. I personally spoke to his sister last night, who verifies that she spoke to him by phone briefly on Tuesday, so that he is alive, but says again that he is badly hurt and is not receiving what he deems health care attention. The Department of Homeland Security previously said that he refused to obey lawful orders. His sister confirmed that he is an undocumented immigrant from Honduras who overstayed the stay in the United States despite being told to leave the country. They say that federal agents broke the car windows after several warnings for him to comply and to come out. Got to look over Minneapolis right now, where today the Minneapolis City Council is considering a resolution demanding Governor Walz pass an eviction moratorium. Council members argue it is needed as many people cannot safely go to work and earn rent with federal agents in the streets. They say without an eviction moratorium, thousands will face eviction as soon as February 1st. And we are following the very latest on the ICE operation and its impacts here in Minnesota, both on air and on KARE 11 Plus. It is our free streaming app where you can get this coverage. New this afternoon, nearly 2,000 Health Partners workers in the Twin Cities could walk off the job. The union representing them says that they voted to strike today. A strike wouldn't start until February 1st. Their contract is set to expire on January 31st. And union leaders say they've had 10 bargaining sessions with no substantial progress. The workers staff more than 25 Twin Cities clinics. Health Partners sent us a statement to respond to the strike vote saying, quote, "We remain focused on reaching an agreement that's fair to our colleagues and sustainable for our organization. We look forward to continuing to make progress at our next bargaining sessions," end quote. And developing right now, the U.S. has seized another oil tanker in the Caribbean. Video posted by U.S. Southern Command shows U.S. forces intercepting the ship and troops boarding it. Officials say the ship was operating against President Trump's established quarantine of sanctioned vessels in the Caribbean. And today, President Trump meeting with Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado at the White House. The visit comes after Trump declined to endorse her after the U.S. capture of the country's leader, Nicolas Maduro. Trump allowed Maduro's vice president to assume control. Maduro and his wife were taken to New York, where they pleaded not guilty to narco-terrorism and drug trafficking charges. We have disturbing new details today in the death of an infant at a daycare in Savage. An 18-year-old woman is now behind bars and charged with murder after police say she admitted to suffocating the child for attention. 11-month-old Harvey Mucklebust was killed on September 22nd at Rocking Horse Daycare. Police say the employee also confessed to abusing another 4-month-old just days earlier. The county attorney is evaluating the options and adding charges for that. The boy's grandmother spoke about the family's grief.
He was affectionately known as our little Harv monster. Harvey was such a blessing to our family, and his death has left a tremendous hole in our hearts.
Daycare has been closed since the death. With their licenses temporarily suspended, they have filed an appeal. Stick with us. We have more news and weather. It is coming up after the break.